All right, everyone, it is interview time, and we are here with Dr. Lori Beth Bisbey. And we are super excited for this topic because so many of our listeners are looking for ways to add more hotness, more newness, more desire into their relationships. And if you're not in a relationship, this is for you as well, because you might be in one someday, or this also could be, I don't know, within a relationship with yourself. Maybe this is for single folks and how you can add more hotness and newness out in the dating world. So a lot of these topics will speak to most people. So we already heard a little in the intro in the bio about Dr. Lori Beth Bisbey, but we would love, Lori, if you could tell us, can I call you Lori? I'm going to call you Dr. Lori. Can I call you Dr. Lori?
Sure.
Cool. Dr. Lori, if you could tell our listeners how you got to where you are today in the field of sexuality.
So I knew when I was very young that I was different sexually, because I remember I Dream of Jeannie was on when I was very young. And I made a bottle to live in to await my master. And I told my friend about it. And she just was like, what the fuck? What's wrong with you? Right. So I learned to kind of keep quiet and not talk about what I was into. And when I started in psychology, I was really drawn to helping people to feel less shame and really own their desires. It took me a while before I found out there were whole bunches of people that liked the same thing that I did. This is pre-internet, guys, so it wasn't so easy for me. It's a lot easier for you now because you can look up and find communities online, but I had no idea. And so I started working with people about 35 years ago now. And I specialize in things that are outside the norm, basically. So I specialize in kink, BDSM, non-monogamy, LGBTQ, but I work a lot with people who are, ordinary everyday folk who just want to try something different, or they want to keep a long-term relationship exciting and going. And that's a huge challenge.
That's one question that we get over and over and over and over again. And it's because long-term relationships, as you know, as human beings, we get bored sometimes, and excitement. And now everything is information highway and we want things faster. And so I get that. This is a great topic. And I think a lot of people out there that are listening are going to love this. So let's speak to those people who are looking for ways to spice things up with their partners. And as Amy said, maybe they're not with that partner yet, or maybe they are. Can you share some of the options on the menu, whether they're newbies or they want to try some kink or dabble in some form of non-monogamy, and even speaking to the more intermediate players as well, if you can?
So the first thing is that you have to kind of know something about what you like and what you want and what you want to explore. And a lot of times people have no clue. They don't even know where to start. So I point people in the direction of erotica, because I find that erotica is a great place where you can observe your own reactions. So that could be straightforward porn, right? You could be watching porn. I think sometimes it's better if you're watching something that isn't just sort of straight porn, because often there's not enough time spent in the buildup. Everything is about the orgasm, right? Everything builds to the cum shot. So you don't actually get to figure out if there's something interesting you might want to add, because they've moved on to the cum shot already. But there's lots of movies out there that aren't X-rated. They're not pornography, but they are erotic, and they can give you an idea of what things might like. For example, the movie The Secretary will give you an idea of just what BDSM can look like. And that's actually pretty freaky, that movie. Like, people think of it as an entry-level movie. It is not entry-level. It's pretty freaky. Even 9.5 weeks can give you an idea of fun things to do.
We watched that. It was a vintage movie night, and I was like, we had never seen it. And we watched it, and it was so hot. Holy fuck.
You know, that movie was based on a book by a woman called Elizabeth McNeil, who actually the book is based on something she lived through.
Oh, awesome.
So if you're a reader, I would suggest you go back to the books. And part of the reason is that books actually have a lot more for you. And these days, lots of them are on audio, so you can listen. And there's such a huge variety of erotica out there. And that's a great way of figuring out, oh, that was spicy. I like that. No, never, right? Never. If you want to tell your partner about something, but you don't want to risk being rejected, so you found something you like, you can kind of push something in their direction and go, what do you think of this? Complete deadpan. Huh? What do you think of this? Somebody gave me this. What do you think of this? You can read to each other, which is even spicier. and share, movie nights, reading nights, all sorts of things. So that's the first big tip for me, because it's a great way to find things without having to go somewhere and do something, which people are always really anxious about. Then the next step is go and do, right? Go and try, but think outside the box. There's things like burlesque nights that can be a lot of fun. There are ones that are queer ones that tend to have BDSM acts. So you're not having to participate. You're just watching. If you're in the UK, Torture Garden always has great shows. So you can see people doing things. There's a space where you can try something if you want, but you don't have to. Lots of the crowd are there just to watch and just to check things out. So it's moving from, just observing then to doing. All the while, you need to pay attention to what's working for you, which is why it's great to do this even if you're single.
We've given this advice to people when they're like, I want sex toys with my partner, but I don't know what kind of sex toy they would like or how to bring it up. And kind of a similar idea is like, why don't you go, if you don't want to leave your house, let's go on to purepleasureshop.com. I own that sex shop with my mom online, everyone. And you can look at all the sex toys and say, how would you feel about trying that? What about that? What about that? Or even better, if you can go in person to a brick and mortar and then you can actually touch and feel the toys. But just for y'all, if you want to go to shop at purepleasureshop.com, maybe get some erotica, you can use coupon code Shameless Sex. You get 15% off and you support my mother. Hey, Mom, we love you. But I think that's great. It's kind of like, let's put this together. Let's explore together and make our lists of what's a yes, no, and maybe, and then put the yeses and maybes together and then see what we can do from there. So this would also include everything from non-monogamy. That would be a kind of a part of that as well.
Absolutely. So if you're thinking more about non-monogamy, let me first say, everybody always thinks of a threesome as the place to start. 3 is an awkward number.
It's true.
It's a really awkward number. You're much more likely to have a fail with 3 than you are with 4, because you can hang out with somebody, right? Either everybody's busy or 2 people are hanging out watching, but you're less likely to feel like you're being singled out and forgotten about. You need to talk about it before you actually act on it. You need to make sure that you really look at yourself and think about what it might feel like to see your partner with someone, because that's actually quite a big ask for a lot of people. But there are places, again, that you can go to start the opening up process. You can go to a swingers club and watch. You don't have to do anything. So you can play with your partner, with other people playing around you. You can have sex with your partner. You can be fucking while there's people fucking near you. All of that can be really exciting, and you still haven't stepped outside that partner bond. And so for some people, that's a nice way to kind of see how they feel. Maybe this is going to be okay. Maybe it's not. But that's one in which I think it's really important to look at what your own insecurities are and your own areas of confidence. Because if you feel rather insecure about yourself, as soon as you start thinking of adding other people, all that insecurity comes up.
I bet. I personally shared the belief, for myself, not speaking for anyone else, that like 4 sounds way better than 3. And 5, 6, 7, 8, that just sounds complicated. But 4 to me of 4 humans all coming together, and there just seems like there's more of a balance there. And there's something about like the third, whether it's being the third, and you've had more experiences. April and I've had differing experiences in this world where I've been the one going to the sex party, having sex in front of people with a partner, and feeling like what that feels like to be in this kind of new monogamish place, and like flirting and touching and maybe having him being spanked by someone while he's going down on me. But you've actually had like more legit threesomes watching your partner having sex with someone, right? Your ex?
No, that never happened.
They never had sex?
We had sex in front of another couple.
Oh, he was just watching you.
Yes, he was watching me have sex with a vulva-owning human, and then we just had sex in front of another couple.
So it was just the vulva owners having all the fun, and they were watching the peanut gallery over there.
I've done the lot. So, I'm fully polyamorous, so I have more than one relationship. But we have a group of us that enjoy playing with each other, and we're into BDSM. And so it can involve all sorts of BDSM and sex. And it's a group of trusted people that I could go play with on my own. If I'm visiting the US without him, it's okay. There's no conversation, oh, this is allowed, that isn't, because we've all known each other for a long time and we've built up a really good relationship. And we have another couple we used to play with all the time. And that 4 energy was always so much fun. And sometimes people worry about if you're doing 4, that means that everybody has to get involved in same-sex sex.
Like we all have to fuck each other.
Yeah. And it doesn't, right?
So I have a quick question for you. So because some folks that listen to us, depending on where they're listening in the world, may not have access to somewhere like the torture garden or sex parties. And if they want to explore this with their partner, do you think a good way to start is like watching a film or something, or
like camming,
or
like
camming? Yeah.
Cam
What do you think in terms of that with accessibility and some folks not being able to be a voyeur at a party?
Okay, so camming is great. Watching a film together is great. Camming is great. But even better, also, if you know where to look and you use your common sense, hire a sex worker.
Yeah, for real.
Hire a sex worker for the sex, for actual sex, or hire a sex worker who's like a professional dom, a professional master, or professional mistress. All of those options are actually great options, be you single or in a couple. If you're not aware of where parties are, or if you're just anxious about the emotional side of things, and you'd rather have it be something that was transactional at first, where the emotional bond is just between you and your partner.
Yeah.
Right. So that takes all that kind of stuff out of it. That person isn't trying to get your partner. You don't have to worry about comparing yourself to them, because they're there doing a job and they're going to treat you gently. They often, sex workers really enjoy working with couples and teaching.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, like you said, they're there to make money. They're doing a job. So they're not like, hey, can I get your number later? I'm going to steal your man. And maybe sometimes that happens, but no, it's different than like within your community, or even just the agreement of when you're out of town, you can go fuck someone. Like that can still follow you places too. So yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of ways to play with that. So, okay, carrying this over more into the kind of the kink world. So a lot of folks want to play a little bit with some sort of power exchange. And a lot of our listeners are a little more new, or maybe intermediate, but less advanced. And if you're advanced, you're awesome. We love you too. But talking specifically about the DS part of the BDSM, and a lot of people are either afraid to ask for it because they want it, or they're afraid of being too much, meaning if I go into that dominant space, I'm too much, especially living in kind of like the Me Too world. Or I don't feel dominant, but my partner wants to be dominated. It feels like a show, or doesn't feel like it's me. Any tips for people on how to explore this world?
Right. So, I mean, this is actually my favorite part of the world, because the power exchange is there's something about that energy that's a lot of fun. Let's start with, if you're not dominant and your partner wants to be dominated, you're not the one who's going to do it. You can't.
Harsh truth. Yeah.
Right? That's the harsh truth. You cannot fake it and have it actually go well. If you have a part of you that's dominant, you might be able to harness that. And so you look at yourself really well, because you might be able to harness that. But ultimately, if it's not your turn on, you can't fake that. It just doesn't come across. In that case, then you might want to see about non-monogamy, if there's a way of incorporating that, even if that is bringing a professional in to just satisfy that one need. But as far as you want to start this and you're worried about the person taking too much, that kind of, they're going to be overbearing, they're going to control too much. You have to remember that everything you do with this, you're doing negotiating first. And when you negotiate from the place of equalness, where you are right now, and you talk through what's on the table and what's off the table, and what are the things, where are the boundaries I might be willing to push. So you can start with looking at the power exchange in the bedroom first, and then experiment with moving it outside of the bedroom, because it's mostly easier for people to look at that power imbalance in the bedroom, because there's always somebody who is the giver and someone who's the receiver, right? You're already set up in your head to think of it that way. There's always a more active partner and a more passive partner. It might change during sex, but there's always one person. It's not equal. It's never equal, right?
That comes to mind for me. And I think April and I can both identify, because April and I, we both are a little more on the submissive side of things. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I have moments where I have these windows of like wild, dominant Amy who wants to take control. So I have windows, but I spend a lot more time in the submissive world. Do you ever have those windows, or how do you feel about them?
Just depends on where I'm at in my life, where I'm like, I want to fucking dominate these people, or I want to be taken care of.
So are you speaking to those? Like if you have some of those windows where maybe it's not like who you are all the time in the bedroom, but you have some of those moments or windows, then maybe you can play more on that. But if you feel like you have none at all, I do not identify with this at all, then it's not really something you should be
So
trying to fix.
I'm dominant in lots of parts of my life, but when it comes to sex and relationships, I am not at all dominant. Zero, 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 zero. I can't even fake it well, even though, I clearly am outspoken. I'm here talking in this way. And I speak in front of really large crowds of people and I manage lots of things. When it comes to that type of relationship, it's not me. And so I can't do it effectively. If you've got windows like that, then you might be more switchy and then you can pull that off. It's just about where you're feeling, when you're feeling, and whether the other person brings that out in you as well.
That's actually a good point, because sometimes you can hook up with people and you had never been in that experience before. I mean, I've been with someone that really was dominant, and it was really exciting because it was the first time I'd ever been with a dominant person. I have also been with really submissive humans, and I took on the dominant role, even though I'm kind of like you, Dr. Lori, where it's like, I never feel like I can be dominant, but it's the person. And I just wanted to interject because I had a question about this. If you are with someone, should you have these conversations outside of the bedroom before things start? Or is it something you should do during, like, you're like, wait, I want this. So I thought we should touch on that as well.
Absolutely. You have the conversation, particularly if you've not done this before, you have the conversation outside of the bedroom. You don't have it during. Part of the reason you don't have it during is when your endorphins are going, it's easier to move your boundaries without really thinking through what the consequences of the boundary moving is. For example, somebody might say, oh, hey, I want to use this paddle on you. Before you went into the bedroom, you were like, yeah, paddles. No, not paddles. Maybe a flogger, but I don't want paddles. Paddles are quite heavy and hard. And even for strong masochists, not a lot of fun sometimes. So, it's like, oh, no, I don't want that. But now you're quite high because the endorphins are running and your partner's like, oh, I want to try a paddle. Oh, yeah, go ahead. And then later feel really bad about it, right? Because you feel coerced or because physically you feel you're in a lot of pain and you didn't want bruises. So you really shouldn't negotiate in the bedroom. That's something that happens outside the bedroom. It's great for it to happen on a different day too, if you're not experienced with this. So when you're experienced, you can sit down with somebody and you can on the day and go, okay, this is what I'm into today, right? But when you've not done this before, the level of excitement and the level of anxiety can be so high that it's better to just, go somewhere that you don't associate with sex, sit down and have the conversation in a really kind of calm manner and negotiate there. And then even if something comes up that you want to do in the middle, use the restraint and put it on the list for next time.
I like that. Yeah.
Well, okay. What about, so you touched a little bit in the beginning of this, when you were answering this question about the power exchange, and you really liked talking about that. So power exchange, and I'm assuming authority transfer are the same things, but will you enlighten us a bit more about those pieces?
Yeah. So we use authority transfer now more than power exchange because you're really not giving your power away. You always have your power. What you're doing is you're giving the authority. So it's like, say you want to drive my car. I give you the keys to my car. That's giving you authority over my car, right? You borrowed my car. I'm not giving you the car. It's still mine, right? So I'm handing the keys over to the person that has authority over me. But this ultimately still belongs. Yes, I know the romantic words. Yes, if you ask him, he'll tell you, my husband will tell you that I'm his. Yes, I agree that I'm his, but ultimately this belongs to me because you can't hand that your personal power over. You don't hand that over. You always have it. You always have access to it.
I love that.
And so that's why we stopped using power exchanges often. I use it a lot when I'm talking to people who I know don't know what the hell I'm talking about if I say authority transfer.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. I love that. What came to me is topping from the bottom. The idea that because you're a bottom, now you must just be like the submissive role who has no control, but really you're kind of still running the show because you're allowing someone to top you to, maybe they're penetrating you or flogging you or massaging you, but you are still an advocate, an active party there. And in fact, sometimes more so than the person that is doing the other things there too, depending on the situation. Is that kind of what you're talking about a little bit?
Sort of. You always have a safe word and you can always walk away, right? Those are two things. You should always have a safe word. We'll just put that aside. Sometimes people don't, but you can always walk away. And that's what I mean. So nobody can take that away from you. You can always leave and you can always end a situation. Therefore, you still have power. The topping from the bottom thing's interesting because a lot of times you hear these platitudes, oh, it's the submissive who's in control. That's rubbish. Both people are in control. It's co-created, right? So I might be willing to give you all of my life. I might be willing to have you have all my bank account details and run my money and I just do exactly what you tell me and I don't make any decisions myself. But if you're not willing to do that with me, it's not happening. So you, as the person in control, has as much power as the person who's giving up control, because you have to want to do these things and be willing to take it on. It's just different ways. It's different roles. So the fun part is surrendering control for somebody on my side of it, the more submissive, the slave side. The fun part of it is surrendering control to someone else. That's also the hard part of it.
Totally. And I think everyone probably has their different sides. Like, so for me, when I play with authority transfer, I'm going to use your terminology. I love being the brat. I did not come up with this. I didn't think about I like being a brat. It's just what comes out of my mouth when it's, like, oh, you've been a bad little girl, but if you do this, then X, Y, and Z is going to happen. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. And because I always win, I win if it, no matter what, I'm going to win. I'm going to get what I want out of this. And I like to play into that role, but that is just something that's innate in me that has come out. And I think that everyone can kind of have their own little persona. There's the slave, the brat, all these pieces. And we're speaking more to the kink world. And if you don't identify with the kink world, then I'm sure this shows up in the non-kink world, though, where we take on personas of being a sexual being with partner or partners, or even with ourselves, right?
Well, this is one of the things that's a lot of fun. Even if you're not doing kink, you can do role play, right? And that's a lot of fun in terms of spicing up your relationship to take on different roles. Like in 9.5 Weeks, where, she came home and there was the bag on the bed. And I can't remember if this was in the movie or not. And there was a wig, a beard, and a mustache in it. And she had man's outfit, and he told her to meet him at the bar. And so they did a gay thing, right? Yeah. So that was complete role play. It was like, you're going to dress as a man and pretend to be a man, and we're going to go to a gay bar together. You're going to meet me at the gay bar and pick me up. Complete fantasy, right?
They go home and have a lot of hot sex.
Absolutely. That's the whole point. The hot sex at the end is the whole point. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this with kink and BDSM or without kink and BDSM in order to spice things up, because it's fun to step out of our day-to-day selves.
Yeah. And I would say for a lot of folks, at least speaking for myself, vital, because if I'm just hanging out in this day-to-day world over here, I get bored real quick. Which brings me to some of the stats that you've shared on a recent survey. And I'm reading some numbers here, so I might not get it perfectly. But so something about 20% of UK adults, because you live in the UK, of all ages are curious about a threesome, and nearly 40% of adults of all ages have been cheated on. Interesting numbers here. You also stated that in your opinion, opening up your relationship consensually is much more likely to save it from harm, as long as people are able to be honest and authentic and have excellent communication and emotional management skills. There are a variety of non-monogamous options. And I'm curious if you can share more about this. And I want to say to our listeners, because people have commented on this before, we're not trying to convince you to be non-monogamous here. We are not pro non-monogamy. We're not anti non-monogamy. We love all the sides of the spectrum and whatever you want to do. We just see with stats such as 40% of people are cheating or cheating on, kind of shows that there's something interesting in the model where there is just a lot of folks with desire for other, and whatever reasons they're exploring it, it's happening. So can you share a little bit more about what that quote that you said in those numbers?
Let's start with this, which is I'm not pro non-monogamy, I'm pro-choice. What I want people to do is to know enough about what's out there and enough about themselves to make a good choice. That's the thing. When people choose monogamy because that's what's expected of them, that's where these numbers start coming in, because they haven't actually thought through what they're choosing. They don't think through what they want. They may not even have talked about sex. I can't tell you the number of married couples that I see who have never even had a conversation about sex. It's frightening. So this was a study that was done because I've been fronting this television show called Open House, The Great Sex Experiment. And so they did a study. They asked UK Gov to do a study about opening up So they commissioned this study. And what came out of it was about 20% of all age groups, between 20 and 30%, depending on how you stack the numbers, who were curious about opening up and particularly about threesomes. About 15% had actually had one. And then there was the 40% admitted to having been cheated on or having cheated in a previous relationship or in their current relationship. And the current divorce rate is 42%. So when I said that opening a relationship can save it if you do it consensually, one thing that we know is that affairs damage relationships, and they don't do it because someone's having sex with someone else. They do it because of lying. That's what the damage is. The damage is the fracture in trust, the betrayal. And that's the part that's hard to get over. So if you are wanting to be with somebody else, it's far safer and far more beneficial to actually talk about it, be open and honest, and look at what the possibilities are with your partner. Because over here, they often say, it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. Rubbish, bullshit. The worst thing you can do when it comes to a relationship is take that attitude. You'll fuck it up every time. It's far better to ask for permission and be willing to work with your partner than it is to do something and then come back and go, oh, I'm sorry, this just happened. So there's a lot of people interested, but this isn't new. What's new is we're talking about it, right? This has been around for ages. It's just now we're talking about it. So people have the opportunity to take advantage of resources. There's a lot of free stuff out there. And you can really learn a lot before you actually step out there. So you have a better chance of making it a success.
Okay, which brings me to another, just kind of mirroring on that a little bit. So hot tips for folks who want to add more newness. We've touched on it a little bit, and they want to refresh their desire. Maybe they've had some stagnancy in their sex lives with their partners. Obviously, we all see that a lot. There's the 40% of the cheating that happens maybe. So if these folks want to dip their toes into non-monogamy, even though we all said that's not what we're pushing on anyone, but if they want to do this, what are some, and I like to say the hot tips, or you can make them boring, but what are some good tips?
Right. So unfortunately, some of them are boring, but tip number one is know what you want, right? Know yourself, know what you want. If you're a person who tends to be insecure, do the work on yourself to deal with the insecurity before you start inviting other people around, because it'll bring out insecurity. If you are secure in your relationship and your relationship is good, it's just boring now, that's a better place to start from than our relationship is on the rocks. It used to be when relationships were on the rocks, people would have a baby to save it. Now they go and decide to have a threesome to save it. Neither works.
I'm sure you've had plenty of clients who had a baby to save and they're like, fuck, we're more fucked than we were before. How do we do this?
Absolutely. So, it's one of those. So that's the first thing that I say to people. The second thing is you have to be somewhat lighthearted about it. It's not so serious. It is serious and it's not serious. This is supposed to be fun. So if it's agony and agonizing, go get some help, right? Go work with somebody who deals with this, who can help you through the process. So you're not just arguing and feeling anxious and feeling horrible. The idea is to spice up your relationship, not to make you miserable. And the same way that you would get help, if you've got something physical going on, you go to the doctor. I'll never understand what it is that makes people decide that they're going to tough out anything that has to do with emotions, right? They don't want to seek help with that. But it's supposed to be fun. If it's heavy and it's intense from the very beginning, maybe you want to be trying something else. There's no obligation to do this. Start on the lighter things. Start by watching. Start by going to places where you can watch. Like we said before, movies and erotica, but then going to places where you can watch and take part with each other without actually bringing someone in is a really good way to start. Talk to people who have done it. Although please don't go to Reddit.
There's some great stuff on Reddit, and Reddit has everything. So.
Well, there's some of the non-monogamy groups on Reddit are like horror story after horror story, and then people eventually come and see you and they're like, oh my God. I'm like, where did you find that? It was on Reddit. Just like, okay, please.
There are folks who I know that say, I've never heard of a non-monogamous relationship lasting. Really, and I was like, what's lasting to you? Is that a year, 5 years, 20 years to the end of life? And when they say that, I was like, well, I have heard the opposite. Actually, I've heard lots of monogamous relationships not lasting and plenty of non-monogamous relationships not lasting, and also plenty of them lasting too. So, but I think if you went on Reddit, you would hear all the horror stories. Just like if I want to Google the thing on my arm that I'm scared about, I'm going to see all the terrible things. That's right. What happens.
I'm 13 years into this one, and I've been non-monogamous for 25 years solely. Before that, I went back and forth a bit, but I'm 13 years into this one, and we show no signs of having issues with it. We're quite happy with it. I know people who have been non-monogamous successfully for 40 years. It takes the same skills that monogamous relationships take, only more so. So your communication needs to be really good. If there's something you're not comfortable talking about, get comfortable talking about it. And sometimes that means not talking to your partner. It means talking to a friend, because you're afraid your partner's going to go, ooh, and that's the worst feeling in the world. You bring up something you want to try and your partner's like, ugh. Have fun. If you're out looking for people, have fun making profiles and don't take online dating too seriously, please. Recognize that there's a lot of shit out there. I'm going to speak specifically to the men for a second.
Yeah, do it.
The women are the ones who get all the attention. This is true. You'll get some, but they're going to get tons of it. If you're going to get upset because your wife or your partner is getting all the fucking attention and nobody's even talking to you and nobody responds to the single note that you sent them, this isn't for you. There are so many more men than women out there on every single site. And that's why the women get all the attention, right? So, you two need to have an agreement about, if you're inviting people into your relationship and you're not going your separate ways and separate dating, who's acceptable and who chooses. And I would advise, by the way, both of you choose. If you're not both attracted, forget it. Don't do it.
It's also because Netflix comes out with movies like The Tinder Swindler. So everyone's like, fuck, another dude trying to swindle me on a dating app.
Catfish thing. The catfish
you're
show.
like,
I don't think it's fucking true. I mean, I get more dick pics on LinkedIn than anywhere else.
Nice. I mean, hey, at least you're getting some dick pics but that's not consensual, everyone. We are not saying send us some dick pics, and we actually have never asked for dick pics, and we have got a couple in our inbox, and we're still saying don't send them to us. The other thing I've seen though, and this is, again, we're speaking, I guess, more to heterosexual relationships in this case. So my guy friends who are on dating apps, they more often are, what's the scroll language? We scroll right when you're into them, or is it left when you're into them, right? I'm so out of the loop.
Never remember.
I think it's whatever. The direction you scroll in, it's been a while.
Left is no and right is yes.
Okay. So they scroll right more often than the women I know. Their women are constantly no. And then like 2 out of 100, they have a yes. And the men are like, do that. I'd hit that. That'd work for me. There's a lot more openness too. So it's just like such a different mindset. It just reminds me of animals, honestly, like birds and like dogs and just like, the birds, the little horny male birds that are flying around, the ladybirds, like, I don't know. And then the horny male birds, like, still doing his bird dance. And we're just animals, but we are more intelligent. And now we have the ability to be fully informed about consent. Thank sweet baby April over that. So I'm glad we are in this era. And also, I want to learn more about what you're offering, because podcasts, this is great. We can be global, helping people learn more about things like this, non-monogamy, consent, how to spice your relationship up, kink. You also, though, have a 6-part TV series called Open House, The Great Sex Experiment. And I'm curious about a couple things. One, is it already out? How do you come into play? You're like the kind of the therapist on the scene. How do people find this? And let's just dive into like how people find and work with you. Let's do all the things. Like, where do they get all your goods?
So as far as the television show is, it was on network TV in the United Kingdom. It's 6 episodes. The last episode is on Friday. So you can't get it in the US yet. Although if you want to catch the last episode, I do a watch party every week. And so I think I have a link tree. If you find me on Instagram, you'll see a link to join the watch party for Friday. I actually won't be there. My husband's running the watch party. I'm going to a cast party to watch it. But yeah, so that's the only way to see it right now. I have a feeling that will change soon, but that's typically what happens when they do a network series. It's usually only available in the country that made it. Although I'm told you can find bits and pieces if you put the name in places in various search engines. How it is it's a cut down version of a real retreat that I do. It's a quick and dirty version of a real retreat that I do, where we have couples come and there are singles there that are sexually adventurous singles who are willing to take part. And we have couples come who want to open up their relationships. And they meet with me and we set challenges for them to help them do this. So some to build their skills and some fun things to get them engaged and in the mood. And we give them the opportunity to spend time with one or more of the singles, depending on what their interest is, right? So like there was an almost foursome, right? And there were a couple of threesomes and there's been some individual dating. So that's the kinds of opportunities. And then after they spend the first night, then they come back and see me the next day and I clean up any messes that are there. And then, and there are, and we bone up on skills and then they get to go do something else. When I do this in the real world, it's a smaller group and it's a 5-day thing. And we do a lot more stuff. We do a lot more skills-based stuff, but we also have a lot of fun. And the idea is to give people the opportunity to try this in an environment that is safe because the people are vetted. And so one of the things that you won't get in the outside world is people who have been vetted. And even when people are vetted, things happen, because people are people. But it's a bit of a safer environment because you've got help and support on tap instead of going out. However, I also see people as couples and as individuals to help them with kink, BDSM, and non-monogamy, and sometimes with just garden variety sexual problems. And I do that mostly online these days since the advent of COVID, but also because I see people all over the world. I don't care where they are. And I run some groups. So I have a Navigating Non-Monogamy group happening at the moment. And I've got another one starting in July. And we do a 6-month group where we've got part of the time you've got a standard topic and the rest of the time your individual issues. So it's a fun way to get involved. So I'm a lot of places. The easiest places to find me, my website is drloribethbisbey.com, and that has loads of stuff on it. On Instagram, I'm Dr. Bisbey. On Twitter, I'm Dr. Bisbey. And on TikTok, I'm Lori Beth UK. On Facebook, you can find me. And I actually have a membership group, but I don't spend as much of my time on Facebook. Most of my time I spend on Instagram and TikTok because they're the most fun.
What's your podcast called?
The A to Z of Sex, or the A to Z of Sex, depending on where you are in the world.
Nice. The A to Z of Sex. I prefer Z over Z.
It's more fun, but that's been going since 2016. So there are tons of episodes there on everything you can imagine at this point. And so that's a lot of fun. If you look that up, you can find it on Spotify and on Apple and all the places you get podcasts. There are 2 of them. One of them was from the time when I was at Voice America. I was at Voice America from 2019 until the end of 2021. The other one that has stuff going back to 2016 also has the Voice America episodes. So the one that has the more episodes is the one that you want to join because it's got everything rather than the one that doesn't have everything anymore.
Go get it. You have a lot of options, content, and I'm excited for this 6-part UK series. I can't
wait to watch it.
It'll come out because we finally get Peaky Blinders, and I watch a lot of the really great British TV, and so I'm assuming that will be out, and I would love to check you out. I'm sure.
Because then I'll get to come over and promote it, which will be fun. And we're hoping for a second season. If anybody's listening in the United Kingdom at the moment and you are interested in taking part, there are applications in the moment for both couples and singles. And if you on Instagram put in open house, the great sex experiment is all one word, that will take you to where you can fill that in. Or if you hit me up, I can direct you to where you need to go to fill that in. It's an opportunity, and we're still accepting applications for people for next season.
Sounds sexy.
Be the experimental lab animal out there in the world, the great sex experiment. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Lori Beth Bisbey. Everyone, thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom and all of this incredible content about non-monogamy and just spicing up your sex life. We all want a little little bit more of that. And to all of you out there, thank you for spicing up my life just a little bit more. My sex life, perhaps, but just my life in general, and Amy's too. And if you can go ahead and give us 5 stars on iTunes, what it does is it helps more people in the world, no matter if they're in the UK or in Florida or in Panama, they can find our show, and we read every single review. We love each and every one of you so much. You are part of the Shameless Sex Revolution. We'll see you next Tuesday. Ciao for now.
Want to learn more? Go to shamelesssex.com, and for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSSEX at purepleasureshop.com.